can open them to more things. They might like, I don't necessarily want to change this, and I would like my relationship with this person to be different, right? So they might, decide to get invested in that part of the process. So really, I mean, motivational interviewing, right? We might call it that. I really try to go more for like, what can you get invested in that's important to you? Yeah, it's like, what's going to let you feel better? Well, I typically worked with students that were pre-identified.
She's EMDR trained, brings a unique blend of experiences in trauma, adoption, substance abuse, and emotional regulation. You pretty much just do it all. So tell me, what got you started down this path? What got you started, especially with the wilderness? That's what brought you to North Carolina from Texas, right?
Yeah. So really, when I started out in my undergrad, I worked in really one of the last settlement homes that still exists from Abigail Adams, like early social work.
I didn't know they still existed.
Yeah. And I don't know if it still exists. This was back in the really kind of late 90s. And part of what I saw with the kids is that they would come and go, so just a lot of recidivism that would happen there. And so part of what happened for me, is I was, again, in my undergrad, I always really knew that I wanted to be a therapist. And it was something that was pretty clear for me early on. I was one of those people that like my friends talked to. It just seemed like I had some natural skills. And so it was something that I wanted to explore, and I liked it.
But that's cool that you were able to identify your skills at such an early age. Not a lot of the younger generation is aware of their talents.
I think my parents encouraged that.
Oh, good parents.
So when I started to really look around at like what works, because I really wanted to be a part of something that works, not a system that's like in and out, in and out, in and out. And so as I started to kind of dip my toe in things and try different things, I actually was in Memphis, Tennessee, and worked for a program called Bridge Builders, which was all about diversity across private, parochial schools, county, city schools, and they would take kids that were really in that, not quite at risk, but more like if you were going to talk about it in terms of grades, you'd say somebody that's kind of in a CD range, right? So it's like doing all right, really, like it's okay. And with some support, like could it kind of bump into a different range for them? And that's where like they sent me to Project Adventure training, which is like an experiential adventure-based training. I got ropes course training.
Okay.
And so then as I started to do these experiential activities with kids, I saw not only the change happen, also this really magnificent component, which is so much a part of, from my perspective, effective therapy, which is it's really about the person determining what they want for themselves.
Them being able to have choice in that moment.
Giving them the voice. And I can remember this one activity we did with the kids. This is when I first started. And so I was training. And it was this group, you can kind of envision like 12, maybe 15 adolescents. And they had this, basically it was this idea of, you have to choose, do you let basically one person live and sacrifice many, or do you let many live and sacrifice one?
Interesting.
Well, and these kids, I mean, blew my mind how they would weigh all these different things. And, at one point they somehow got into talking about like communism. I can't even remember. Yeah, like how it connected. But they're talking about this. And one of the kids is talking about communism. It's not accurate. Yeah. And so I want to be like, no, I want to give you the definition. But the co-leader who's training me is like, no, like that's not really the point. This isn't about them having the right definition, right? It's about letting them figure it out in their own way.
Giving them agency.
Absolutely. Even to the point, because I kept like, I'd just nudge her, I'd nudge her. And she'd be like, mm-mm. And I'd nudge her. Mm-mm. And I'd keep, and finally she was like, if you nudge me again, you have to leave.
Oh my God. That's hilarious.
What I saw at the end when it all wrapped up was I was the one that was like, wow, like look what all these kids did, all these different topics. But in the end, they really came back to a place where they all got on board with those choices. And that I think really laid the groundwork for doing the kind of work that I've really enjoyed with kids and giving them the space to do that.
I think it's such an interesting field and take on therapy. And so important to recognize because, I mean, if you think about it, like the happiest things out there are like toddlers and puppies and kittens. And it's because they're in the here and now. They don't care about what just happened 10 minutes ago. They don't care what's going to happen in an hour. They're not anxious or depressed. They're just like, what can I see, touch, taste, do? And then we, as humans, we stick ourselves in desks and chairs for 8 hours. And then we wonder why our kiddos in middle school and high school aren't super happy.
Yes.
We need to get them out doing things, using their bodies, using their skills. But
absolutely.
We don't seem to have those conversations. But it sounds like the wilderness program led you to be able to provide that space.
Well, the beauty of that really is that even though certainly the students weren't always open to that, especially initially, they were dropped into this, beautiful wilderness nature and starting to really experience what it's like to even just, have an interaction with, whether it's the sun on your skin. I mean, right, the sensory components of feeling something different than even like being anxious. Even if it's for that right split second of like, oh, that sun feels so good. It's this relief, right? And we know that there's a soothing right to the nervous system that happens, even in that boom split second.
Well, but it gives it a pause. It gives it a moment, peace that it normally wouldn't get, right? And then slowly over time, you're getting these messages that it's safe again. So the nervous system can start to regulate, hopefully.
Yes.
I know the wilderness programs right now aren't getting the best rap, but there are some really good ethical ones out there. And I don't want us to, what is that phrase? Throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yep, absolutely. And I agree with that, right? There are a lot of dynamics and there are a lot of people that have had a lot of different experiences. And so we want to honor, ideally all of that.
Yes, there are some awful companies out there doing some sneaky, shitty things, giving therapists a bad name. Half the time, they're not even therapists. It's just people who are big organizations taking control of things. And then there's other people who are therapists in the trenches doing this difficult work, having great outcomes, but that doesn't make a interesting story. And so that doesn't get spoken to. All those good moments, all those good programs, because there are some really good ones.
Well, and I think the other piece is that certainly not all kids, and sometimes people need more support.
Absolutely, figuring out what program fits the individual. Did you, in your experience, have to have those conversations with like parents, caregivers, like this isn't the right setting? Or
I was I wasn't really in that role.
Okay.
Most of the time, that had kind of pre-occurred. Clinical
Before
director
they
being
got to you.
involved. Lots of people involved in kind of that admissions experience. Ideally, by the time they got to me, that had occurred. They're identified as being, a good fit. Certainly on occasion, that wasn't the case. Like whether that was not a right fit for the program or not a right fit for me,
Mhm.
or the group
No,
that I
that's
might have as
important.
well.
A lot of people don't recognize or even have the conversation that sometimes you're not the right therapist for a person.
Hmm.
And it's okay to say that.
Yes, absolutely.
You want to be with the right therapist. And if the therapist is
Hmm.
like, this isn't gonna gel, it's not an insult,
Hmm.
right? And if
Yes.
somebody tells me I'm not a good fit for them, I'm not insulted by that. More power to you. You find a therapist
Hmm.
who is a good fit.
Yes. I completely agree. In an ideal world, I want it to fit for the client and for me, that those things really gel. Right. Because then you can really jump into the challenging work. It's like, if we have to really kind of push and pull around that relationship, it's just another step of making things challenging when they're already challenging.
Yeah, I don't
Hmm.
want to be a part of creating more challenge for a client.
Yes. Me too.
Now you were in Kentucky. What got you to Western North Carolina here?
Well, so when I finished, I did my bridge builders that we talked about with the adventure
Mhm.
part. And then the summer before I went to graduate school, I worked at YMCA Camp Greenville.
Oh, that's a
Uh-huh.
beautiful site. I've been there.
Hmm. Hmm. And just loved it. I ran like their challenge course and the ropes course for the summer. And
Oh,
so that connected me. Like I met people, in my own life that are still in my life, 20 plus years later. So that really hooked me in. And then when I did my master's, I did 2 practicums at a rape crisis center. So that's where my
oh,
trauma
okay.
training like initially started. And then my other one I did in wilderness because I had a suspicion this could really create change for kids in a different way. And again, I have this thing of like, I really want change to happen for people. I don't, it's like it's like the therapist fit. If it's not working, if things aren't shifting, if you're not getting what you need, like let's do something else. And like
Right.
you said, it's not personal. It's about, this is what it's all about. It's
Hmm.
supposed to serve you and work for you.
Being more. But
Hmm.
I notice people having difficulty with the change, even if they know it's going to be positive.
Hmm.
It's just unknown. So,
Yes.
what are some things that you've found helpful or experiences you've dealt with a client who, just keeps, I guess, butting heads because the change isn't something that they're open to, or they don't even realize that change needs to happen?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a conversation starter that helps you with
Uh-huh.
that, or a tool, or
Well, I typically like if they're really in a place of, for example, maybe other people want certain things to be different, right? But they're like, it doesn't really bother me. Then it's like,
Mhm.
okay, well, what does bother you? Right? Like, is there something that you do want to work on? And then sometimes part of what will naturally come up as they start to, well, this, I'd work on this or I'd work on that.
Mhm.
And then the beginning of that process can open them to more things. They might like, I don't necessarily want to change this, and I would like my relationship with this person to be different.
Oh, okay.
Right. So they might, decide to get invested in that part of the process. So really, I mean, motivational interviewing, right? We might call it that. Um, I really try to go more for like, what can you get invested in that's important to you?
Right, so that you can have a happier, more successful life, however you
Mm-hmm.
choose to define it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like what's going to let you feel better.
Yeah. I heard that you worked a lot with borderline.
Well, I typically worked with students that were pre-identified, sometimes trauma, sometimes not, but that was a niche
Mhm.
piece. And it wasn't uncommon for them to have just difficulty with that identity development, self-destructive behaviors. So there were concerns that they could develop, or even solidify, right, the personality traits that are unproductive, especially in relationships moving forward.
It's such a hard field to work in.
Mm-hmm.
How did you help yourself not to get burnt out, or did you get burnt?
Oh, I mean, in the sense of things I did not to get burned out, I think it's important to acknowledge like that work happened in a container,
Hmm. Okay.
right? Like it was a residential setting, there was 24-hour care, there were emergency protocols in place. And so there was this container, and really there was a safety piece that we could provide. I wouldn't do that same work in private practice. So, with that, strong boundaries. I mean, my mantra has always been with the group consistency, structure, and boundaries. And that's how we create this safe place where you can really launch and do the work, especially that kind of work. It's intense, it's vulnerable, it's uncomfortable. Most people don't want to do it. I don't say that, in a
Mhm.
crass, kind of way. Just it's really uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, and we don't like to be uncomfortable as humans.
Yes.
We just don't.
And our nervous system doesn't like it either.
Mm-mm. Even if it's going to help you heal.
Yes. Absolutely. It's like I
Mhm.
can just skip that.
Well, before we kind of wrap this up, do you have a suggestion or a takeaway or a tool for our listeners when they start to recognize that they're pushing against the uncomfortable, when they're uncomfortable and they know they need to stay uncomfortable to make a change?
hmm I would offer a couple of options, right? Different things work
Mhm.
for different people. I
Please.
think if you can just recognize that that's happening and take a pause, I mean, take a breath, right? Again, even if you can just acknowledge it, ideally you could in some way like make some space for it. Maybe like, this is uncomfortable and I'm okay with you staying with me, like, holding some space for that. Um, I also think as those things come up that there are some, things you can do just to kind of shift it a little bit. I like to try to use humming, and this is something
Just
that I'll use.
wonderful about
Uh-huh.
how humming naturally will help your nervous system take them off.
hmm It's really fascinating. It's so easy. I mean, you can do it anywhere.
Nobody will know what you're doing.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, who's going to really say anything about somebody humming, right? Even if they do, it's like, oh, excuse me.
So is it the vibration or what is
Well,
it about?
vibration, I think there's a piece too around like the vagus nerve connecting to the humming.
Mhm.
I think that's really where the turn down starts to happen. And it's not like magic, but it takes the edge off,
Just a
right?
moment, right? Just any small moments.
hmm
But you don't want magic because magic doesn't last
It's true.
and it doesn't repeat. You want small things that you can do over and over again to give you that structure and consistency so that it has that pattern and it sticks, which nobody wants to hear with our, iPhones and quick this and quick that, but
Yes.
it's just not the way our body heals.
hmm That patience, and the one step at a time, and even I think too, there's this, right? Like it's not linear. It's
No,
just not linear.
no,
And
up,
so you're
down,
gonna
backwards, forward.
yeah. And it's hard. I mean, right, especially I think as it starts to get better, right? It's like, yeah. And then that first I mean, whatever it might be, like whether it's a trigger of some kind, whether it's like your body has an anxious response and you feel it, you don't necessarily know what really created it, right? But when those things come up, it's like, oh, I just wanted to stay on my trajectory.
Yes. And so many people will take that as they're going backwards and get
Mhm.
scared. I think it's an important reminder that just because you hit a roadblock, a speed bump, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't mean that all that progress goes away.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And again, I think it's part of how we learn and prepare ourselves. Like those things are going to continue to happen, whether
Absolutely.
it's right in the therapeutic work, whether it's in, whatever your kind of role in your life might look like. Get, none of it is straight up, right? Like none of us get out of life unscathed, right? Things happen.
Well, thank you, Shalene, for all those different options to help us with our nervous system. And thank you so much for agreeing to come on my podcast.
You're so welcome.
Listeners, thank you for spending some time with me on Notes to My Nervous System. If this gave your brain a breather, hit follow and leave a quick review. Unless it's a negative review, I don't want to read that. Share this podcast with a friend who could use some calm. And if you have a nervous system question, send it my way. I might be able to answer it or find someone who can. I'll leave you with our closing question of the day. What anchor of calm will guide you through the rest of your day? Until next time, take a deep breath and be kind to your own life. Subscribe, and if you're leaving a review, let's make it a nice one. Life's too short for bad vibes. Hey, it's that time again to cut through the noise. Our Mythbuster series delivers mental health truths. Like this one. Myth of the week, you should always be happy. The pressure to consistently be happy, these social media feeds that are telling us this, it's just an unrealistic standard that can make anyone feel inadequate or flawed when experiencing normal human emotions like sadness, anger, frustration.